On paper, Alex Mail was just another man from Weston-super-Mare. But behind the scenes, he was moving kilos of cocaine, laundering money, and arranging deals with some of the UK's most organised criminals. His tool of choice? Not a gun, not a gang, but an encrypted phone and the belief that nobody was watching. For a while, he was right. Using Enquirer, the now infamous encrypted messaging system, Mail operated like a ghost. He didn't just deal, he coordinated. Police believe he oversaw a network of distributors across the southwest, buying in bulk and shipping drugs in quantities that could bankroll a luxury lifestyle. But when Enquirer was cracked in 2020 as part of Operation Venetic, his digital shield shattered. Arrests followed. So did headlines. But by then, Alex Mail had vanished. He spent years on the run, slipping through borders, changing names and living off-grid. Then, in 2022, a forged passport and a misstep at Lisbon Airport brought him down. Or so it seemed. This is the story of Alex Mail. From encrypted empire to Interpol's most wanted list. From a Turkish layover to a Portuguese legal loophole that left British police empty-handed. A story of tech, timing, and a man who thought he was untouchable. Weston-super-Mare isn't known for high-level drug dealers. It's a sleepy seaside town, retirees, beach huts, chip shops. But beneath the surface, something else was moving. Alex Mail was one of the first to shift it. He didn't start out flashy. No big cars, no Rolex, just connections, quiet ones. By his mid-20s, Mail had turned into a regional player, not a street dealer, but someone organizing the ones who were: cocaine, ketamine, cannabis. Western England's network was small but lucrative, and Mail was building a name in it. What changed everything was tech, specifically Enquirer. By 2019, encrypted phones weren't just a luxury for big-time gangsters. They were the go-to tool for anyone serious. Enquirer offered end-to-end secrecy, no names, no tracking, no worries. Or so it seemed. Mail embraced it. His operation grew. According to the National Crime Agency, he became a key distributor, ordering large kilos, assigning drops, coordinating with other crews across the southwest. He wasn't just selling drugs, he was managing people who sold for him. The phone became his HQ, messages, codes, orders, all sent under the belief that no one could hear. But the system he trusted would be the same one that exposed him. By 2020, Mail had been arrested, but then skipped bail, fled the country, vanished. For the next 4 years, he lived as a shadow, only ever a few moves ahead of the system he once outsmarted. But his name never left the list. Not for the NCA, not for Interpol, not for the families hit hardest by the drug trade he helped flood across the southwest. He thought he was untouchable. That tech and travel would keep him safe. What he didn't count on was Lisbon. For years, the UK's top criminals thought they'd cracked it. Privacy, at last. Enquirer was sold as unbreakable. No SIM records, self-wiping messages. Anonymity by design. But in 2020, that illusion collapsed overnight. What they didn't know was that French and Dutch investigators had hacked the entire system. Quietly, methodically. Every message, location ping and contact, from dealers, suppliers, gun runners, fed into real-time servers. Across Europe, law enforcement watched criminal networks expose themselves one message at a time. They called it Operation Venetic. In the UK, it was the largest digital surveillance operation ever run. Thousands of names surfaced, hundreds of operations launched. One of them, Alex Mail. Mail was linked to an Enquirer handle coordinating the supply of multiple kilos of cocaine and ketamine. His phone, his trusted tool, was now evidence. Investigators believed he wasn't just buying to sell. He was overseeing multiple distributors, giving orders, setting prices, discussing money laundering and the potential purchase of a firearm. But as the first arrests were made in 2020, Mail vanished. He skipped bail in December that year, shortly after being picked up by the Southwest Regional Organised Crime Unit. By the time the Enquirer revelations were starting to build cases across the country, Mail was already on the move. Some say he went to Spain, others believe Morocco. But what's clear is that he knew the walls were closing in and bolted before they did. Still, his name stayed hot. A warrant went out. Interpol listed him. In January 2022, he was added to the NCA's Most Wanted. His mugshot was released, his tattoos detailed, a skull on the throat, tribal ink running down both arms, distinctive and still missing. Authorities described him as a key regional distributor, one of the Southwest's main links to wholesale drugs. He wasn't a foot soldier, he was infrastructure, and Operation Venetic wasn't done. Over 1,300 people would eventually be charged based on Enquirer evidence, 260 convicted, £75 million in cash seized, firearms recovered. But for all its success, Venetic had a weakness. Most of its charges hinged on one thing: Enquirer evidence. And as challenges started rising in European courts about how that evidence was collected, cases began to wobble. Alex Mail wasn't just dodging prison, he was betting that by the time they caught him, the evidence might not hold up. When Alex Mail vanished in late 2020, he didn't just disappear, he adapted. Like so many fugitives with resources and contacts, he didn't need to hide in the shadows. He needed to blend in, move quietly, and stay ahead of the paperwork. His first stop? Likely Spain, specifically the southern coast, Costa del Sol, Marbella, San Pedro, and other enclaves where British expats, criminals, and cartel affiliates mingle with ease. Mail had contacts, he had cash, and more importantly, he had time. From there, he kept moving. One report placed him in Morocco. Another suggested he was switching identities, using forged documents to move freely through Schengen borders. The same skills that helped him run a regional drug network were now focused on staying out of reach. Fake passports, burner phones, a low profile in public, but just active enough in criminal circles to survive. Interpol flagged him. The National Crime Agency named him one of the UK's most wanted. His name appeared on billboards in Spain as part of a Europol campaign, but nothing stuck. And while on the run, Mail didn't just lie low, he allegedly stayed involved. Authorities believe he continued managing some aspects of his network from abroad, leveraging encrypted platforms and trusted contacts to keep cash and commodities moving. He was no longer just a drug dealer. He was an international fugitive managing risk in real time. The longer he stayed gone, the more confident he seemed to get. Friends say he thought he'd outrun it, that if the UK courts couldn't extradite quickly, the case might fade. Others say he never believed the Enquirer evidence would hold, not in the long run, not with so many legal questions swirling around its collection. But staying out means staying perfect, and all it takes is one mistake. That moment came in April 2022. A flight, a passport, a name that didn't quite match. After more than a year as a ghost, Alex Mail resurfaced. Not because he wanted to, but because a passport control officer in Turkey raised an eyebrow. The forged document didn't clear. He was refused entry. He turned around, boarded a flight to Lisbon, and walked straight into Portuguese authorities. The escape had lasted 16 months. Now, for the first time, Alex Mail was in handcuffs. April 30th, 2022, Lisbon Airport. Alex Mail steps off a flight from Istanbul. He's got a forged passport, a fake name, and a quiet confidence that's been building over months on the run. He's done this before: airports, border checks, false identities. But this time, it doesn't work. The passport triggers a red flag, not just any alert, Interpol. Portuguese border police pull him aside. They take fingerprints, check biometrics, run the data. It doesn't take long. The man in front of them is one of Britain's most wanted fugitives, accused drug trafficker, alleged money launderer, suspected of using Enquirer to direct a major UK drug network. It's all there in the system. He's arrested on the spot. The news makes headlines within hours. The NCA celebrates. Another fugitive caught. Another name ticked off the Operation Venetic list. They say Alex Mail thought he was smarter than the system, that he believed he could move across borders undetected. And for a while, he did. But now, he's in a Lisbon holding cell. The arrest is a win. Mail had slipped through the cracks once already, back in 2020 when he skipped bail and vanished. This time, the agencies involved moved fast. The UK prepares an extradition request. The paperwork is sent. The wheels of justice turn. At first, it looks like a formality. The UK and Portugal have an extradition agreement. Mail is in custody. The charges are serious: conspiracy to supply cocaine and ketamine, money laundering, and conspiracy to acquire a firearm. No minor offences, no technicality play. But nothing is ever that simple. In the background, his legal team moves just as quickly. They file for habeas corpus, a legal process to challenge his detention. It's a pressure tactic, one that banks on delays, missed paperwork, or legal grey areas. And in this case, it works. While the extradition request is still being processed, the clock runs out. Portuguese law imposes a strict custody time limit for uncharged suspects. That deadline passes. And on October 15, 2022, just over 5 months after his arrest, Alex Mail walks free. No charges filed, no bail required, released from custody on a legal technicality. For the NCA, it's a nightmare. The arrest they celebrated is now unravelling in real time. The man they called one of the UK's most wanted is no longer in custody. He's not even under house arrest. He's gone. And this time, the system didn't catch him. It let him go. By the time Alex Mail stepped out of custody in Portugal, the UK's National Crime Agency had already started bracing for damage control. What was meant to be a clean handover, arrest, extradition, conviction, had turned into a diplomatic and legal mess. And the worst part, it wasn't a loophole that let him go, it was the rules. Under Portuguese law, a suspect held without formal charges must be released after a fixed custody limit. That time ran out before the UK's extradition paperwork could push through the courts. His legal team filed a habeas corpus application, and a Portuguese Supreme Court judge ruled in his favour. No bail, no house arrest, just walk out. It wasn't about whether he was guilty. It wasn't even about the charges. It was about time and bureaucracy. The NCA called it frustrating. Privately, it was more than that. This was the same agency that had proudly added Mail to its most wanted list just months earlier. His arrest in Lisbon had been a PR win, but now he wasn't just a fugitive again. He was a fugitive who had embarrassed them twice. What made it worse was the silence. The UK didn't issue a public update. No warning to say the suspect they'd trumpeted was now back on the loose. No details about how the extradition stalled. It was journalists who found out first. Not law enforcement. Some legal experts pointed fingers at the UK. If the extradition request had been submitted sooner or with tighter documentation, the result might have been different. But others highlighted the deeper issue. International extradition laws vary wildly and move slowly. And in a system obsessed with process, speed isn't guaranteed. The Portuguese court never said Mail was innocent. It didn't rule on the strength of the Enquirer evidence. It simply said, if you haven't charged him, you can't hold him. And just like that, one of the UK's biggest post-Enquirer arrests turned into a cautionary tale. For Mail, it meant another chance to vanish. For the agencies chasing him, it meant starting over, again. And for the public watching from the sidelines, it raised a question no one seemed ready to answer. How do you lose the same man twice? After his surprise release by Portuguese authorities in late 2022, Alex Mail vanished once again. No bail conditions, no ankle tag, just a fugitive with money, connections, and time to plan his next move. For months, the trail went cold. He was off the radar, no confirmed sightings, no fresh data hits. The embarrassment for the NCA was public, but behind closed doors, surveillance teams quietly ramped up again. Mail didn't return to the UK. Instead, he is believed to have moved through Spain and North Africa using forged passports and trusted intermediaries to stay one step ahead. sources later confirmed he spent time in Morocco, where criminal networks offered both shelter and new opportunities. But the pressure never let up. His image was circulated among European law enforcement, flagged at every airport, border, and checkpoint. In early 2024, after nearly a year and a half on the run, Mail slipped up again. This time, it wasn't a forged passport. It was a financial transaction that triggered interest. A flagged wire transfer led to renewed surveillance. Weeks later, he was spotted near Marbella, Spain. On his way to a meeting, a joint UK-Spanish task force moved in. No chase, no drama. Alex Mail was finally back in custody. In April 2024, nearly 2 years after slipping through the fingers of Portuguese authorities, Alex Mail finally stood in a UK courtroom. The man once branded Britain's most wanted was no longer in the wind. He was in the dock. Extradited back from Portugal under quieter circumstances in late 2023, after months of renewed negotiation, Mail now faced the charges he had once run from: conspiracy to supply cocaine and ketamine, money laundering, and conspiracy to acquire a firearm. His case was built on evidence gathered from Enquirer, part of Operation Venetic, Britain's largest digital takedown of organised crime. Prosecutors claimed Mail wasn't just dealing, he was directing. A regional controller managing kilos of Class A drugs using encrypted devices to coordinate with suppliers and distributors across Europe. Mail eventually pleaded guilty, with defense lawyers arguing that the pressure of being a fugitive had forced him into surrender. The court, however, focused not on his flight, but on the scale of his operation and the trust he commanded in criminal networks. In December 2024, at Bristol Crown Court, Alex Mail was sentenced to 18 years in prison. The judge called him an orchestrator, not a foot soldier, a man who ran a business that thrived on addiction, secrecy, and fear. The courtroom was packed. The NCA had their win, albeit a delayed one. Officers released a statement welcoming the sentence, calling it proof that fugitives will always be pursued, no matter how long it takes. But some questions still linger. Would the case have stood without Enquirer? Would he have served time if Portugal hadn't eventually relented? And how many others like him are still out there, living quietly behind fake names and forged documents? Alex Mail's empire may have crumbled, but the game hasn't stopped. It just moves on. This time, justice caught up. But next time, will it be fast enough? When the Enquirer network was cracked back in 2020, it was hailed as a revolution in digital policing. For years, encrypted phones had given drug bosses and hitmen what they thought was total security. But with one stroke, thanks to a secret French-Dutch operation, the wall came crashing down. Thousands of suspects, millions of messages. It was, according to the NCA, the most significant blow to organised crime in a generation. But by 2024, cracks had started to show, not in the messages, but in the prosecutions. In France, the country that led the hacking operation, its own Supreme Court made a ruling that sent shockwaves through Europe's justice systems. It found that prosecutors failed to provide a crucial certificate, an authentication of the data gathered through the hack. Without it, the court said, there was no way to verify that the evidence hadn't been tampered with. Worse, it questioned the legality of the data sharing with other countries, like the UK. For the National Crime Agency, that posed a massive problem. Much of their case against Alex Mail, and hundreds of others, rests on that same Enquirer data. If courts in Europe start doubting its legality, how long before UK cases begin to unravel too? Already, defense lawyers are circling. Some point out that the NCA still hasn't revealed exactly how it received and handled the data. Others argue that privacy rights were trampled in the process. And then, there's the fact that many suspects were charged based solely on digital messages. No drugs in hand, no cash, no weapons. Just words on a screen. It's a legal minefield. On one side, you have police forces who say the data proves conspiracy and control over massive drug networks. On the other, defense teams who argue it's vague, unverifiable, and in some cases, illegally obtained. The implications for Alex Mail are direct. If the EncroChat data is thrown out, the case against him weakens. That might explain why Portugal hesitated. If the foundation of the evidence is unstable, why rush extradition? EncroChat once looked like a masterstroke, but as time passes, what was once solid ground now feels like sand. And for every drug kingpin that's already been jailed, there are dozens, maybe hundreds, still waiting for trial. If the courts start pulling threads, the whole operation could unravel. And fugitives like Mail, they'll be watching every moment.